So we can at least get started with introductions and kind of some of the logistics of tonight's meeting. So first I want to say thank you very much to the Select Board and to Cynthia, again, for allowing us to come and present during a Select Board meeting. We find we get a better turnout that way versus trying to have a separate meeting on another night. So we do appreciate you letting us take some time off your agenda. My name is Jennifer Fitch. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Transportation. I am the Project Initiation and Innovation Team Project Manager. That's a lot. What that means is I'm really the scoping project manager for the structures section. So basically all projects come into the scoping unit, and basically we develop preferred alternatives for all the scoping, all of the bridges that come into our section. And then basically once we have a defined scope, it then goes off into design, and the design project manager takes it from there and basically works it through design and construction. So right now we're in the very beginning, we're in the project initiation phase. We have completed looking at all different types of alternatives, which Jonathan is going to talk about tonight. And then he's going to pass it back over to me to talk about traffic maintenance, because that's part of this as well. And a couple of other items. We have a sign-in sheet that's going around, so please sign in and write as legibly as you can with your email address. If you'd like any project updates, we're going to use that to start creating a listserv, so we can get back in touch with you. And we'll talk a little bit more about public outreach towards the end of the presentation. Also, we have what we call turning point software and clickers. So we're actually going to be asking you for responses tonight as we go through the presentation. This allows us to basically get feedback from each one of you. Everybody has an equal say, and what you're going to see is the polling will be live, which is pretty neat. So as people respond, you're going to see that responses are going to shift around in percentages. But again, that's so that everybody has a voice. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. It's completely up to you whether or not you want to participate in that. But it does allow us to get some information. At the end, what will happen is all the responses will be saved. We're going to upload all those responses to our public SharePoint site, and we'll distribute it to the town. And again, it's a good history of the things that we talked about, maybe concerns that you have, those kind of things. And we have it all nicely documented in a presentation put up online for the public. And Jonathan and I are going to be going back and forth a little bit. Last thing I want to mention is Eric Goldman is here from the agency. We are basically creating a very short, a little documentary in the structures section on what each of the sections does. So he's here to kind of video some of the things that we do as part of our scoping process. He's going to take some shots from behind. He may jump in front. If it's something that you don't want to be on the video footage, just let me know. We'll make sure that we don't capture your faces. But again, he's just kind of documenting our process and what we do. So with that, we can start moving forward. Is there any questions on all the logistics stuff before I get going? Huh?
How do you use these things?
Oh, so we'll do it when we pull up the first slide, but basically you're going to see there'll be a question, and then there'll be a corresponding letter or number, and you just hit the corresponding letter or number on your card.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was one.
Is this the light here?
Try it.
Might be.
Nope.
Oh, is that too dark? Yeah, it's probably a little too dark.
We don't
Why
want
am
you
I
napping. No one's allowed to nap.
Did you turn that one on back there?
That's not bad.
Well, but does that work for the camera folks in the room?
You could turn that front hall light on too. No?
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
If it's not enough light for you, then we can turn it on. It's fine.
I think on would probably be best.
Better for you?
Sorry,
Okay.
but-
Can you? Okay. Appreciate everybody being so cooperative about that. So my name is Jennifer Fitch again. I'm the VTrans Project Initiation and Innovation Team Project Manager. And we have lots of folks here tonight. They're each going to explain kind of what they do and what their role is.
So I'm Jonathan Griffin, and I'm the scoping engineer. So I put this presentation together and evaluated the different alternatives and costs and benefits for you folks.
I'm Rob Young, I'm the design project manager. After the alternative is accepted by our management, I'll move forward through our design process. I'll be meeting with property owners and designing, working with a consultant that is here, John from CLD consultant is here. And we're going to focus on getting the design of the proposed alternative out to construction.
I'm Kyle Obnauer. I'm the Historic Preservation Specialist. And I work with project managers and the whole agency of transportation basically to review projects and look at impacts to potential impacts to historic resources and various state and federal laws, and trying to find an ideal solution really. So.
And Matt, I was gonna give you you don't work for VTrans, but I figure it's good in case folks don't know who you are.
Matt Mann, Wyndham Regional Commission, here providing the regional connectivity piece to the project.
As Rob said, I'm John Bide. I'm with CLD Consulting Engineers. We've been hired by VTrans to do the design of the project.
And then did you wanna say hi, Eric? I know you're in the background, but.
Eric, the video guys you mentioned before.
All right.
And we're gonna play back and forth with the microphone again because we're trying to take some clips.
All right, so the purpose of our meeting today is basically to provide you with an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with this this maintenance project. So we're gonna, discuss the alternatives and then hopefully go through the recommendations and make sure everyone's on the same page that we're on. So first off, you guys should all be aware, as do the locals, this is the location map. The star in the middle here is where the bridge is located, right in town by Kimball Street and Water Street. And then here's a satellite overview of the bridge. And as you guys are all aware, there's a lot going on here. It's in tight confines, which really limits the different alternatives and options that we have.
Can you just go point,
Yep.
can you go back and point out what's what there?
Yes, absolutely. So, I don't know if you can see the laser pointer, but that's the bridge.
Right,
Here's the general store,
right,
the paper mill,
right.
and then I believe there's a pizza place back here, hair salon, and then Kimball Hill Road here.
Okay.
Did I go there? Yes, all right. So, basically we're going to go through the existing conditions of the current structure, as well as the alternatives considered, and then our recommended alternative. And then after that, we'll have Jen talk about maintenance of traffic, the schedule, and the overall summary. So, the project is currently right here in the initiation phase of project definition. We're basically trying to determine what we're going to do to this bridge. And concurrently, we're trying to move these forward as quickly as possible into the final design phase, which is project design, which is why CLD has already been brought on. We're moving these deck projects forward as quickly as possible. There are several other towns that were identified as well for these deck replacements. And by doing that now, we're hoping to, I don't know if you have anything to add as far as why we chose AMP.
So we're basically, one of the things, we have a new asset management program that started about 1.5 years ago. And really what their job is to look at all the assets in the state, including roads, bridges, could even be signs, lines, all sorts of different things. And one of the things we're really focusing on is preserving the life of our infrastructure. So if we can put in a certain amount of money now in the bridge's life, then we can extend it for another 40 years. So you pay a small amount of money now for a big payoff in the end, and the bridge structure is there for a longer period of time. So they identified 10 candidate bridges throughout the state that we came in and looked at and said, yes, does it make sense to do a bridge deck here or not? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then we're going to try to move forward. And because these are considered preventative projects, basically we're trying to preserve the projects, preserve the bridges. We want to fund them quickly, we want to design them quickly, and we want to get them into construction quickly. So that's the intent of these projects.
Right. So this one's a little bit different than our standard project, which is why they're concurrently being designed with the scoping phase. So here's your first question. Polling should be open. Who are you representing? And you should see over here, as people start to vote.
Those are going to be hard to see. So it's always going to be ascending from top to bottom. So top is A, which is municipal official, B is resident, C is local business, D is independent organization, E is emergency services, and F is other. It's just hard to see in this light.
If I'm the Putney Conservation Commission, I'm not really an official, but I'm sort of affiliated.
That'd be an independent organization perhaps, or
Can we hit two?
Other, yeah.
I'll be
Other.
so local business 50% right now.
That's great. I'm
Municipal
really
is
happy
40.
some businesses came out. That's great.
Excellent. So Sorry, the next question is, how often did I miss somebody? So I can go back, we can get some more feedback here.
Go
back.
back.
I didn't.
There, now it's open, it should be open to polling again. It does reopen.
Oh, I have to push on the only other. I think I'm an F.
We got one F over there, 10%.
That's probably me.
Okay,
I didn't read.
Here, I'm gonna do this, John, and I'm gonna reset this
We
one.
had a
Okay.
meeting that did.
All right, everybody revote one more time.
Maybe you should be blocked by that.
Well, that's good.
Oh, whoa.
show of hands who has not voted yet. Okay, so everybody's voted. So excellent, we've got a good distribution. Sometimes you just get, the select board's here and we have no one else, so we really don't get a good representation
Well, we
of the
do like to
town.
have our select boards participate, so that's good.
Well, that was a lot of fun.
All right, well, there's more.
Oh, there's more, Ian.
So here you go. How often do you use this segment of US Route 5? A is daily, B is weekly, C is monthly, D is rarely, and E is never. I'm assuming you guys all got to use it at some point. It's written down. All right. Anybody still voting? I want to close anyone
One
out.
more. There you go.
All right, excellent. And then we've got a few more of these. How often do you walk over the bridge?
So this one is an interesting structure because the bridge was built first, and then they went in and put a pedestrian bridge in for the sidewalk. So they're actually two separate structures.
Yeah, I believe they were built 1 year apart from each other. I think that one was 54 and the next one was 55.
Be interesting to see this if we have landmark representatives.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
That would-
And then how often do you bike
We
over
do a lot
the
of
bridge?
students that walk over that bridge daily.
So I don't know if anybody here is biking over the bridge or not.
So that's great to know, and one of the things we're gonna ask, and it's great that the RPC is here today, is they are gonna be doing pedestrian counts for us this summer, because we really do wanna know how many people are actually walking over the bridge in the summertime. Because again, that helps give us some feedback about accommodating pedestrians.
I think we've got one more after this.
Is your population down at all in summer, Kyle? or not?
There are programs that run over the summer. I sent you guys.
You did, and that was perfect. That's just the information that we need. Can you go back one?
Yep.
So the question about biking, just out of curiosity, because it looks like not a lot of the folks in this room bike, do you know if people do bike a lot over that bridge?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things to point out right now, and I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself, but this is something I want to remember, is that right now your lane width is wider than state standard, which means that when we replace the bridge deck and we restripe it, instead of a 12-foot lane, you could have an 11-foot lane, and instead of a 3-foot shoulder, you could have a 4-foot shoulder. So 4 feet shoulders are what we call our multi-use shoulders, and so that's kind of our minimum standard for biking and walking, but biking also. So I just want to keep that in mind. We can still leave it the same way it is now, but if you wanted a little bit more shoulder for bicyclists, we can do that as well. So that's just something to be thinking about.
And you'll see later on that we're actually gaining a little bit of width. We're maintaining the existing bridge width, but the new proposed railing is a little bit narrower than the curb that's existing on the bridge. So you're going to gain a little over 2 feet. So how often do you park here, since this is a downtown setting? I'm guessing a lot of people parking in your vicinity, maybe for the Putney General Store or... All right, looks like everybody's voted. And then how often do you visit your local shops? There's a few more questions. We've got to, I'm going to try and pull you guys to death here today.
But this actually is really good information for us to have as we finish the scoping phase and move into design.
Right. And we kind of use this with the community questionnaire that we sent out to you, Cynthia, that you filled out for us, to help us identify what the needs are. And why are you attending the meeting? Is it for us or some other reason? Specific concern, general interest? Do you live in close vicinity, or is there another reason? All right, specific concerns up there. Hopefully we can answer it today. That's really what we're hoping for. All right, so I'm gonna go over the existing conditions, the alternatives that we looked at, and then what we recommend. So, before we do that, I just want to give you a little bit of a lingo that we might use in this process. We've got a diagram here that kind of shows each part. Hopefully the laser pointer works. So we've got our bridge railing, which we'll be discussing, our deck surface treatment, which is our pavement, our deck, and then our beams, or often referred to as girders, which rest on bridge seats or bearings. And all of that combined makes up the superstructure, which will probably be discussed at some point today. And then that rests in its entirety on the substructure, which is made up of wing walls, which will definitely be discussed, and then footings. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask. Yes?
Does the town-owned dam to the west have anything to do with the bridge structure at all?
No. So they're separate.
Okay.
So here is a view looking south over the bridge towards the Putney General Store and Kimball Hill. So the existing condition, this bridge is classified as a major collector on US Route 5. It's a 54-foot long, simple span rolled beam bridge, which that's just a standard girder type. And it was constructed in 1954, and it's owned by the state of Vermont, lucky for the town of Putney, right? So no financial responsibilities, hopefully. So, the existing bridge is a concrete deck cast in place on the existing steel beams. And it currently has significant saturation and reinforcing that is exposed, particularly in the fascias. I don't know if you noticed when you've walked over the bridge that there's wind slots or holes in the curb, so any water flowing across the bridge actually just goes through the curb and then over the side of the bridge. So most of the deterioration and reinforcing that's exposed is on the outside of the bridge. It currently has non-crash tested guardrail. I'm sure when it was installed in '54 that it met all the design standards of that time, but we have a lot more stringent, safety requirements now. So we'd like to bring that up to code. And then the northeast wing wall has moved. There's a photo. It's displaced 7 inches. It was cast on laid up stone, and I think some of those stones might have rolled out of place a little bit. So that's something we'd like to address in this project as well.
Can you say what saturation is?
Yep, I got a picture of it coming right up.
No, okay.
So right here. I don't know if maybe I should kill the light for 1 second, just so you can get a better look at it. So, I'll put the lights back on for the camera folks in a moment. All this white here in the concrete is efflorescence, and it's basically the concrete has become saturated with chlorides and water. So the deck doesn't have the full integrity that it once had. There's enough void space in the concrete that water can actually move through the concrete, which is how these chlorides from salting the roads in the winter have gotten here. So an ideal deck basically doesn't allow water to penetrate through it. So if water's getting through it, those chlorides are getting to the reinforcing steel, and it's reducing the capacity of the girder, or the deck. So at this time, you can see the beams look like they're in excellent shape, which is why this was identified as a deck replacement candidate. And we've got these ratings down here. Every bridge gets ratings. The deck, the superstructure, the substructure, the channel alignment, everything gets rated by our bridge inspection folks. And 7 is really good. A brand new bridge, if we opened it day 1 to traffic, never gets rated better than an 8. So 7 is excellent. 5 is fair. Once you get down to a 3, we're starting to consider closing. 3s are pretty bad. 2 would definitely be closed to traffic. So right here, we've got an opportunity to replace the deck and salvage the good condition of these steel girders still. If we were to allow this to continue to allow chlorides to come through and penetrate through the deck, those would eventually get onto the steel, and then they could start corroding the steel, and then we'd be looking at a much larger project than just a deck replacement, which would mean more inconvenience and more cost. So here's the wing wall that's displaced, and as you can see over here in the corner, it's cast on a laid up stone, and part of it's even fallen out. And up here, those were even at one point. The angle is a little bit deceiving. It hasn't uplifted at all. It's actually rotated out. And it's the last measured in the most recent bridge inspection by 7 inches. And there is railing, I believe, cast on top of that. There's a metal tube railing right on top of that wing wall. So we'd like to fix that as part of this project as well. So here's our resource constraint. This bridge has historic guardrail on it. And as you can see here, the sidewalk and the actual bridge for traffic are two separate structures. There's a 1-inch gap between them, so they behave completely independently. We are only looking at doing work to the vehicular bridge and leaving the pedestrian bridge untouched as the scope of this project. And I don't know if I want to bring Kyle in just to say a little bit about the historic rail. I just want to mention something.
Yeah, this bridge is very interesting. I haven't seen this particular railing design anywhere else in Vermont. But really, it's a good example of standardized bridge construction. In Vermont, really beginning with the flood of 1927, there was kind of a shift towards bridge design to standardized construction. And that trend carried on through the Great Depression and really came into full swing in Vermont with the construction of the interstate. And like I said, this is just a great example of standardized bridge construction and railing design in Vermont. Does anyone have any quick questions about the bridge itself, regarding its historic qualities, or anything I can answer right now?
It's all the railing is relatively original as far as sort of 1954 railing.
Exactly. Yep. It looks pretty much unchanged from that 53, 54 standardized specification that was included with the original bridge plans. So it's, as far as we can tell, yeah, it's pretty intact.
And when you look at the as-built plans of this, they're identical to what is shown for the original contract of the 53, 4, 5
Yeah.
construction years. So.
This talked about crash testing the rail. Is that, how is that done?
So this would not be crash tested. Crash tested rails are built full mock-up, full scale. They actually drive a vehicle at a design speed, at an angle, into the guardrail and measure the performance of it, basically the dynamic deflection of that, and whether or not, what happens to the car once it impacts the railing. And the federal highway does that, some states do that, and once they're approved to meet a certain crash test level, then they can be adopted for use in new construction. So the guardrail we're proposing, which you'll see a little bit later, is a crash tested guardrail, I believe. Or no, this one is not. The 10-year rail is the crash tested. It's designed for TL3 though, correct? Right, Rob? Designed for a crash test level.
With the historic rail on the west side, on the dam side, would that stay as it is? Because
That would be
it's not part of
untouched.
Okay.
So that would stay as it is, and the Historic Preservation Group helped us pick an alternative that's more up to date, that is kind of, I don't know how you best describe it.
Yeah, one of our biggest constraints is the crash testing with new railing designs. And so we looked at the crash tested options that we could use, and we picked the option that we felt at least somewhat echoes what's here. So there's some kind of continuity, and it is still appropriate, we think, with the setting basically of the historic village. And unfortunately, one of the downsides with this bridge type is with a deck replacement, the bridge railings themselves are integrated into the bridge deck. So if you replace the deck, there's no way to really salvage the historic railing. So even if we didn't have to consider the crash test ratings in this situation, rehabilitating the deck, basically, there's no way to save the railing because it's just one integrated unit. So
We wouldn't be able to reattach it to the new deck, right? Is what you're trying to get at.
exactly, yeah.
So you had said that the actual railing is in pretty good condition?
It's, as far as we can tell.
Considering that it was built in 1954.
Yeah. I would say, definitely the lower parts of the railing, as John mentioned, have started to deteriorate pretty significantly. But the metal itself is not in too bad a shape.
And I don't know if anybody grabbed the fact sheet on their way in, but there's some additional photos here. You can grab one on your way out if you want, but we do have a photo of that curve, and you can pass this around if you'd like. With a photo on the left on the bottom shows the bottom of that railing, the deteriorated reinforcing, and the concrete spalled off. And I don't believe I have a photo of that in the slideshow.
And the only other thing I want to add is, as we all know, right, vehicles have gotten bigger since 1954, right? They're taller, they're heavier, they're bigger, and they weigh more. So what would have been, you know, something that would have kept you in the road today is not what's going to, or back then, is not what's going to keep you in the road today. So that's why the crash standards keep going up, because our vehicles keep getting larger, heavier, those kind of things. And so when they crash into that rail, right, they need to be able to basically deflect and go back into the lane. Something like this with a very large truck wouldn't be able to do that, and you'd basically drive off into the river. And we don't want to have an unsafe condition for the traveling public.
Any other questions for Kyle? Or?
So, just based on the condition being what it is, and the fact that they're already gonna be in there, what are the options for actually replacing that rail right here?
Well,
during this project?
So if we were to do that,
Yeah.
we would never build a concrete pedestrian railing. It just isn't economical. You know, this is only, no car is gonna hit this pedestrian railing. So if we were to do a pedestrian railing, it would be like a fence, essentially. It would be this elaborate.
The other thing is, and Kyle, you should definitely jump in on this one, is the historic folks try to preserve whatever they can, whenever they can. So because that third rail is in good shape and good condition, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kyle, but I would say that they would want us to preserve that rail. Is that correct?
That's exactly it. It's just, if we have a chance to at least preserve or retain one of the original features of the original bridge and railing, we think that's a great opportunity, so we can at least, you know,
Pretty heavy-duty pedestrian.
yeah, it's a good opportunity to,
That rail has been hit by a car before.
On the end, on the blunt end?
Yeah.
Like this one here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was someone was getting gas at the gas station and they didn't have their brake or something and it got loose and went down and went right into that. The bridge won.
Then I can't recall, but I believe we were evaluating some approach railing with the new curb. So the town's got the sidewalk project, which actually kind of kicks off there. And I think we were going to try and look at putting in some approach railing to keep that rail from being a blunt end for cars to hit.
and
Just to close it out, I
Sure.
guess, from an aesthetic standpoint, and historic, because I'm sure those are two things that, you know, you weigh. From the aesthetically, you're gonna have two different styles of railing.
Sure.
And I totally understand the preservation of the historic part. But if you're gonna have to come in eventually and replace the railing before the deck is gonna be replaced again, is there any value to actually doing it all at once, I guess? As
So
opposed,
yeah, so basically you're concerned that at some point that will also have to be replaced?
it sounds like it will, just based on what you were talking about, the condition of it, before a new deck is replaced in 40 years. And then obviously the aesthetic part
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a preservation standpoint, you know, preserving this one railing is great, and it's also something we can do to help kind of mitigate the loss of the historic railing, other historic railings, but I'd probably defer to these guys as far as, you know, future work and longevity of what we choose to retain.
It's in excellent shape right now. It's definitely going to live longer than a vehicular bridge in similar condition because it doesn't get the same wear and tear. You know, pedestrian traffic isn't going to have the same impact on a pedestrian bridge that vehicular traffic is going to have on a bridge. You know, the weights, the speeds, it's just, there's a lot more going on, a lot more forces, dynamic loads that are being applied. So I would expect that this bridge, in its current condition, would live much longer than a bridge in the same condition that gets a lot more loads, heavier loads, more frequent loading. And I don't know, I can't be certain, there's no way to be certain that this will last as long as the new deck will, but it definitely, at this point in time, there's value in this asset. It won't need any work or major rehabilitation for a long time. So it doesn't need to have any money spent on it right now.
And I think the state's hope would be that when we go in and we replace the deck, that both structures will last another 40 years, and then when we come back to replace the entire bridge structure, likely this will all be one. You're not going to have two separate structures. It'll be one structure. Likely there'll just be a curb here, with a sidewalk, there won't be a rail here. You'll just have the 2 rails on the outer edge, and this one won't exist anymore. That's likely what they will, I mean, I can't tell you what they're gonna do in 40 years, but that's how we would approach it today, so that's probably how they'll approach it in the future.
So for the superstructure, the number 7 that you gave it, I believe?
Yes,
You
yep.
gave it a 7, that
Yep.
includes the sidewalk portion?
I'm not sure how the rating engineers do that, because I don't know if we're
That is a good
required.
question, because normally, this is the first one I've run into where
Where
there's
they're
been a
separate.
separate pedestrian
Right.
bridge. So that's a good
Okay.
question, that's something that we can go back and I'll ask, because I'd like to know myself.
Because, there is a snow blower that drives over
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, it does get a load.
It does get a load.
Right, you know, you get the, is it snow blower or a plow for your sidewalks? I don't know which
Yeah,
one
it's
it
one of
is.
those,
Yeah, but, so as of now, we've decided that the best scope of work to move forward would be to leave it intact.
Okay.
So here's kind of a quick overview of all the paved areas in town. You've got Kimball Hill, US 5, some parking areas. I think this is High-Low Biddy Road here, Water Street, and then some additional parking over here. So the design criteria that we've had to work with, the ADT, annual daily traffic, or average daily traffic is 300, or 3,000 cars per day. Design hourly volume, DHV, right here, would be the number of cars that travel over this bridge in the peak hour, which would be 440 cars in 1 hour. The percent trucks is 3.6, it's probably all Soundview, it's all you guys, I'm guessing. I don't know how much more truck traffic there is. And the design speed is 30 miles per hour. And then some of the things that we've had to consider is this is a historic bridge, so we want to mitigate the loss of the historic railing as much as possible. There's extensive underground utilities that the contractor is going to need to work around, so we have to keep that in mind as we go through our scope and what we're going to try and do. And then we want to maintain access to all the local businesses throughout construction, and that's really our biggest challenge.
So this is the number of cars that you're building for, not the number of cars who are using the bridge right now.
Correct. I believe this is the
Those are
the
one
design
and the same.
considerations.
They're the one and the
This is
same
the
right now?
20. This should be the 20-year, the forecast in 20 years,
Oh,
Oh,
or
okay.
25 years.
So this is
I believe
not
this is the
how many
forecast.
vehicles?
They're almost, the forecast is almost identical to the current conditions.
This is current. here.
Okay, so the forecast and the current are almost identical, and I think the reason is the interstate. Most through traffic is using the interstate, so the local traffic, I don't think is expected to change a lot.
Are you gonna do any traffic counts of current traffic using Kimball Hill and Sand Hill Road?
That's an excellent question, and we're gonna get there.
Okay.
But that's a good one. Once we get to maintenance of traffic, I'll start talking about that.
And I'll hand it off to Jen for that part. So, all right. So the alternatives that we looked at were no action. Just leave it as it is right now. How much more life can we get out of it? What are going to be the ramifications if we do that? Ramifications. So we already discussed that in detail somewhat, that if we don't do anything, that the bridge deck is going to continue to deteriorate, the chlorides are going to get onto the steel, and then we're going to have a larger project in the future. And then there's likely to be some minor maintenance throughout the next however many years we leave that in place. So we disconsidered that option. We'd rather deal with it now and get the most longevity out of the rest of the structure as possible. Deck patching. You guys have seen the photo of the saturation. There's really no place to kind of start and stop. Some decks just have localized deterioration where you can patch that one area and then the rest of the deck's in pretty good shape and you can just kind of limp it along for another 20 years. This one, in this condition, once you start demoing it, there's no good sound concrete to stop at. So this one would not be a good option for that. And if we tried it, the repairs being adjacent to less sound concrete would just cause additional deterioration and it wouldn't last very long. We're estimating about 15 years at the most. So that left us only with a deck replacement option as far as the scope of work that we were looking at as identified by our asset management group. So the deck replacement option also includes the wing wall repair and the new concrete railing. So our recommended alternative, logically, is the deck replacement. So we're looking at replacing the cast-in-place deck with full-depth precast panels. And we would like to maintain the existing bridge lane and width so that we're not widening the structure, we're not having any additional impacts. There's not a lot of space to widen it if we want to. And if we did, we'd be looking at more work for additional girders or substructure work. So we're just going to leave it as it is. And it already exceeds current state standards. And then we are going to do something to mitigate the historic railing as much as possible. So here's the proposed typical section and the existing typical. So here's your current typical. You've got a 2 foot, I believe 2'1" curb, and then a 1 foot thick concrete railing on both sides of the bridge. The new bridge is only going to have a 1 foot thick, or is proposed to have a 1 foot thick concrete railing with a metal. So this one's got concrete and metal the full width. There's just the parapets, and in between the parapets there's steel tubing. This one would have a solid bottom concrete the whole length of the bridge. There would be parapets, and in between the parapets, full height would be steel tubing. And we got some photos of that.
He's gonna show you some pictures.
But what that does is that increases your shoulder widths quite a bit. If you maintain the 11-foot lanes, you go from a 3-foot shoulder to 4'1" and 5'1". This should be 6'2", I believe. So this is an example of a bridge railing. This is not the one we're proposing, but we just want to show you a few of the other examples we've done to mitigate historic preservation. So this is one where there are no parapets. It's just the end block, combination concrete on the bottom, steel on top. And then here's an end view of a similar railing. Concrete on the bottom, steel on top. And then another one, this one's got concrete parapets with the steel tubing. And then this is the one that we're proposing. So this one has got the concrete along the entire bottom, and then as you can see, you've got the concrete parapets every, I believe it's 15 to 20 feet, and the steel metal, horizontal steel tubing here with the vertical spindles.
And the reason why we picked this one is because we believe this one most closely mimics the one that will be left intact, because it's got the combination with the concrete and the steel. And what's really important here is when we talk about crash tested, it's the concrete. You're gonna have to have the concrete on the bottom. You got no choice on that, because that we have to have concrete. That's what keeps you basically from driving out into the river. Once we get past a certain height, I think it's 24 inches of concrete on the bottom, then we can talk about, adding a little bit of detail on the top. And that's basically, so what we like about this one, and Kyle can speak to this probably better than I can, is it still has, kind of mimics that concrete parapet that you currently have. And then it also has that vertical steel rail, which is what you have. So again, we're trying to tie it in as much as we can to the existing rail that will be maintained, while providing you something that has the crash testedness down here.
So this is our preferred alternative, and we got a question for you after. Which bridge railing do you like the best?
Now, what's your preferred alternative there? Is that?
Want to turn off the lights?
And I believe this one,
That's fine. They can.
I can turn the light off for a second, but
Yeah.
So it's A through E again.
D is a oopsie railing.
That's fine. No, it's fine. They can go for it if they want.
So it's C.
Starts with A.
E is the one that you're proposing.
E is the one we are
Correct.
proposing.
Correct. And just so you know, we're not locking in any decisions here tonight, so don't feel like when you vote for something, that's it. Because one of the things that Historic Preservation is gonna do is they're gonna also check in with the town again, along with Rob, and just to make sure that, yes, this is the rail we're moving forward with. So don't feel like once you decide tonight, that's it, and we walk away. But this at least helps give us some guidance.
This one's in Berrytown, and it's really nice, right by Booth Brothers. It's a very nice railing.
It is a really pretty railing.
No pressure.
I think you talked them right into it.
All right. All right, so turn the light back on, not off. And I believe we're kicking it to Jennifer now.
All right,
Yes.
I get to have the fun part. All right, so one of the things we said tonight, and I say a lot, is that the bridge is the easy part. We got those down. It's really easy to figure out what you need to do to a bridge to either replace it or rehabilitate it. It's maintenance of traffic that's really tricky. And in this situation, it's even trickier than most of the situations that we're in, because in this case, we're right in downtown Putney. And so basically, no matter what we do here, it's gonna be painful and it's gonna be difficult. So we usually look at 3 different options as our standard. And those 3 options are either road closure, which is our preferred alternative, generally speaking, because what we try to do is minimize project impacts, which allows us to streamline project delivery so we deliver projects more quickly at a lower cost. And so there's sort of a win-win for everybody in that situation, but obviously closing the road is not an option in some locations, depending on how long the detour is, for example, and those kind of things, whether there's a local bypass. some of the things we'll talk about in a minute. The next thing we look at is phase construction. Phase construction is when we basically take out one lane and we basically have alternating one-way traffic on the other lane while they demo this lane and basically replace this lane. Then once this lane is back up and running again, we switch traffic back over. Now we take this lane out while we have alternating one-way on the other lane and build that one, and then eventually open the bridge to two-way, two-lane traffic. Now, the downside of phase construction is that it takes the whole construction season, because basically you're doing things twice. There's also the downside because there's a joint that's basically left in between those two lanes, and that allows for water and chlorides to get in more readily. So usually we see faster deterioration with bridges where we've done phase construction. And it's usually the most costly option for us because, again, you're doing things twice and the contractor's here for about twice the length of time. So those are the reasons why we don't like phase construction, but there are times where we have to do phase construction because it's the only option. And then the last one we look at is a temporary bridge. That's where you see a bridge that's right alongside the existing bridge. We close the existing bridge and we reroute traffic onto the temporary bridge. In this case, we didn't even consider it for two reasons. One was it's a very tight location. It would be almost impossible to fit a temporary bridge in here. And the second reason is because this is considered a preventative maintenance or preserving the bridge. So again, we're trying to spend less money right now to extend the life of the bridge as much as we can. And again, like I said, there's really no way to put a temporary bridge in here anyway. So the first thing that we looked at, like I said, is a road closure. We have looked at this, as Jonathan said before, we're going to be using precast deck panels. So we're using prefabricated bridge components that are built off-site. We truck them on-site and we lift them into place. And what that allows us to do is build the bridge quickly. It's accelerated bridge construction, so we can get in and get out as fast as possible. Right now, the maximum time we're going to come and ask from the community is 10 days. One of the things Rob is going to do when he gets it into design is to see if he can reduce the number of days down from 10 days. We're going to do that if we can. So we start with a conservative estimate because we never want to have to come back to a community and ask for more time. We would rather come back to you and say we're going to deliver it to you in less time. So that's a conservative estimate. We're confident we can deliver it in 10 days. We're also going to incentivize the contract. So what that means is we're going to figure out how many days we think it's going to take to replace the deck, and then how many days we think the contractor, if he's really working hard, can build it in, and we're going to incentivize him to open the bridge, let's say 1 day early, for example, and he gets a 5% bonus on the contract if he does that. And I will tell you, the Accelerated Bridge Program has been around for 4 years, and we have had a 100% success rate with opening all of our bridges early, and the contractors getting full incentive. We're happy to pay the contractors more money when they're working hard to open our bridges early. So they get a compensation, and it's better for the public as well. There is a regional detour route, which I'm going to show you, and then we'll talk about the local bypass that you were mentioning. So,
You got one question, Jen?
oh, sorry.
Does that include the wing wall repair?
Yes,
Okay,
it does.
because that seems a little more can of worms than just a new deck.
It does. Do you want to add something to that?
It's another detail that we can consider, but even, we have, she mentioned precast deck panels, but we also can do precast approach slabs, which is actually precast elements off the bridge. And so that's just another tool in the toolbox, another prefabricated piece that we could include in it.
And if we didn't have the wing wall, we think we could do it in even less time.
Okay.
So that's including that as well.
Can you talk about what 10 days construction means, the time?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of internal discussion, so I'm going to actually let Rob answer that question since he's going to be the design project manager. So with the 10 days, what do you envision in terms of the number of hours a contractor would be working?
So we can do this a couple ways. What we like to allow the contractors kind of give them the site, right? If we give them the site, then they can do what they need to do and kind of get in and get out. What I propose is that we allow them to work 24/7. A lot of times we can allow them to work 24/7, but we would have like a noise ordinance on top of that. So a lot of contractors won't work 24/7, they'll work like 12-hour days. If they get a little behind, they may stay a little later, but then you have that noise ordinance attached with that. And that's what we're anticipating with the 10, right now, with the 10 days would be, we're estimating a 12-hour workday. But the contractor could get behind and they would, hopefully they would meet that time frame.
Is it two 5-day business weeks?
It would be a continuous 10 days.
Okay, including weekends?
Right, so if they start, it's right, they wouldn't stop and start again. It would be continuous, kind of, like I said, they get in, do what they need to do.
So Rob is one of the AVP project managers, so he has a really good handle on how long it takes to do things on site. The other thing that we talked about in the car is if the noise ordinance is waived, and this would be up to the town of Putney, whether or not you want to do this, then we believe that's another way to shave a day or two off the schedule, meaning allowing them to work 24 hours a day, which would mean it could be noisy at night, it's going to be bright at night. We know that you have tenants, you mentioned that earlier today, that live near the site. So that's really a discussion with the community about how do you want to deal with your impacts and how long do you want the closure to be. So that's something that the community, Rob will work with the community during design to sort of work out those details. Currently, the way our contracts go out is there's a noise ordinance between 9 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. They can't go over 75 decibels, which is actually pretty low. So usually at night, if they are working underneath that noise restriction, they're just kind of cleaning up the site because there's not a lot of other work that they can do without going over that noise ordinance. So here's the regional detour. A lot of times we refer to the regional detour as the truck detour. We'll talk about that because we definitely do not want trucks using our local bypass, well, not our local bypasses, the town's local bypasses. In this case, the truck detour route is 22.3 miles, and again, it adds about 27 minutes to travel time. Another good reason, this is what I would consider a moderate detour length for us. We've certainly done longer than this in the state. The downside of the state of Vermont is we don't have a lot of roads, so unfortunately that usually means our detours are pretty long. And again, this is a moderate, I would say, detour route. We'll talk about, so this is a potential local bypass route. This is one we looked, what was the shortest local bypass in town. You can see it's Kimball Hill Road up to Westminster Road, Sackett's Brook down to US Route 5. Here's Basketville right here.
Sand Hill.
Did I say it wrong?
Well, Sackett's Brook is, Sand Hill is that road right there.
The road is Sand Hill.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I'm not local. I'm not from here. You can tell. So, Cynthia had a very good question. How do local bypasses work? So this is the answer. We come to the town, and Rob will do this during final design or when he's at contract phase, and he'll come to the town and he'll say, where do you want your local bypass to be? We recognize, the state recognizes that local people in the town are not going to take the 22-mile detour. We know that. That's going to happen. We will never sign the local bypass. We will never promote the local bypass. You're not going to hear anything from the state of Vermont, from our contractor, from our project outreach coordinator. No one's going to talk about the local bypass, okay? But we recognize that people in the town are going to use it. So what we do is we work with the community. They say, well, we believe most traffic will go on this one route, right? And then what Rob will do is he'll do local bypass compensation, which is we have this calculation that we do, and it's based on the length of the local bypass, the length of the detour, or the amount of time for the detour, so 10 days, plus we add 7, just because we throw that in there as a little extra. And we basically calculate what this grant will be. We provide the grant to the town, and then the town can take that money and you can do whatever you want with it. Normally, what we recommend is enforcement to make sure trucks aren't getting on your road, dust control if it's a gravel road, any kind of minor upkeep that might be occurring from having that additional traffic. Usually cars don't do a lot of damage, it's the trucks that do a lot of damage to your roads. So those are the kind of things we recommend using it for, but again, the town can do whatever they want with that money. It's totally your choice. I told Cynthia, if you wanted to, you could put barricades up and say, you know, only the people that live on this road can drive this local bypass. That's up to the town. Or you can say, I'm going to sign it because I know that I've got folks in the town that are going to be using it, and I'm fine with them using this during construction, so you can sign it. Or you could do nothing. So it's totally up to the town in terms of what you want to do with your local bypass. And you may decide that this isn't, I think this is the one that makes the most sense, but you might tell me that's not the one that we want to use for our local bypass. So again, up to the town on that.
And I think we had this presentation on Friday, and Brian Harlow was there, our road foreman, and we're gonna work together because we know there's a lot of local, we wanna limit what's going on that road, but we also recognize there's a lot of, you know, excavation companies, trucking, that we don't want to stop local people that need to use that to get to the other side of town. So it's really gonna be the timing of the year that we do this, but Brian is really sensitive to wanting to keep the traffic down, but also sensitive to the fact that there are local businesses that need to use it. So I think we're gonna work, work on how that's gonna look. So as it goes on, we'll.
What's the load limit on Sand Hill, do you know?
24? 24? Yeah, I was that, yeah,
24.
24. So we talked about the bridge the other day, didn't someone?
Yeah, I load rated the bridge, or checked with our loading group, it's got tons and tons of capacity. I don't think you could put anything on it heavy enough to be a problem.
So, and the one great thing that I did want to mention here is the way that closures normally work in a standard project is we allow for one-way alternating traffic for 2 weeks prior to the closure so the contractor can do some kind of work, get some prep stuff done, get into place, get his equipment out there. And then we close the bridge for whatever the duration is. And then typically we allow for 2 weeks of alternating one-way traffic after the closure so that we can go there again, button up some things on the site that they may not have been able to finish during the closure period. In this case, what's going to happen is all these elements for the deck will be precast, but the rail itself is going to have to be done cast in place because you can't precast that rail. We're kind of on a curve. It's really pretty. It would be very difficult to try to cast that at a plant, bring it into site, and basically make the connection and have it there. So this will be cast in place, which means the contractor is going to be around for a little bit longer because he's doing this while he's on site. However, you luckily have the width. So the great thing about this is that we can do the rail while we're maintaining two-way traffic, which is great because in most cases we can't do that because our bridges are too narrow. It doesn't allow us to do that. So the nice thing is we're going to be able to open it up to two-way, two-lane traffic earlier than we normally would be able to do. So that's great. Rob still may have a little bit of time at the end of the detour where he allows for alternating one way, but I think we should be able to open up to two-way, two-lane pretty quickly.
I think the scope of this is pretty small. The 2 week before may be likely, but afterwards, I mean, I don't see much disruption. A lot of times where we're doing other work, but in this case, I think it'd be pretty much 2 lanes after the fact. They could do most of this concrete work on the side. The day the concrete truck comes in, you know, it'll be a limited time when they pour, but it'd be pretty minimal impact after.
So that's great, because in most towns I can't say that, but in this one I can. So again, trying to minimize impacts. Yes?
Is the foot traffic going to be allowed at all?
That's a very good question. So during the closure period, we are not going to allow pedestrians on the sidewalk. And the reason why we're not going to do that is because it's a safety hazard. During demolition and placement of those precast panels, they're flying these big pieces of concrete in the air. We don't want anyone walking on the bridge and get hit in the head with a piece of precast because they'll die. So we don't want that to happen. So we are going to close the sidewalk for 10 days, but one of the things we're going to be having to do this summer is the RPC is going to be doing ped counts. If we find that ped counts are high, one of the things we can do is have a bus, for example, or we can work with Landmark and we can provide them funding and they could basically have a van to shuttle people around. If we did it during a time when you have students on campus, for example, if we couldn't do it during that time when you don't have students. So there's different ways we can mitigate for pedestrian movements. Again, it all just depends and we're going to find out how much use we have and that's going to help us figure out what we need to do to mitigate for pedestrians. Okay, so I am going to show you phased as well just because I want you to see what that looks like. So phased construction, again, you can see they've got this lane open right, so alternating one-way traffic, and then you've got the contractors working over on the other side. So this is what it would look like. It would be 2 phases, and that's the space that you're seeing. Phase 1, basically traffic would be shifted over and they'd be working on the other lane, and then phase 2, this lane, this would be done. And I said that wrong. That's the one they would be working on. So traffic would be on this one, they take that out, and they put the new deck in. Then the second phase is they would shift traffic over into the new lane that was just built, and they would be working on this lane.
And phase 1 would be challenging to allow for pedestrian traffic again, because you'll notice on the top table that we remove the railing in order to allow to get the trucks over there. So one of the options we were looking at is putting the Jersey barrier on the pedestrian bridge, just as a visual aid and cue to keep trucks from getting over there. If we did that, that doesn't leave much space for pedestrians. So phasing, we would still have big impacts to the pedestrian traffic as well.
The other thing that we wanted to mention is with phased construction, now we have to control the flow of traffic over the bridge. In your particular situation, you've got an intersection on one side of the bridge, which does not make maintaining traffic on this side of the bridge easy, which basically means we have to have lights, and those lights are going to have phases, right, to allow one stream of traffic to move at a time. And basically what happens is, right, your light turns green, you go, and then the light turns red, but you still have to let that traffic clear before then the other light can turn green. So there are delays associated with phase construction and with signals. And we would propose to close High Biddy Road during phase construction because what we're trying to do is eliminate as many turning movements as possible, because the more movements we have, the more phases we have, and the longer people are waiting for that green light, because we have more lights basically. So we would propose to close this road, and then you'd have to have a signal for here, and then you've got a signal on the other side, right? Because you got people on the other side of the bridge. So you're looking at multiple phases to try to move traffic in and out of that intersection and over the bridge, which all just means delays. It means you're sitting there in traffic, is what it means. So here's a diagram of phase construction to show you kind of what it would look like. And we did talk to Brian at Soundview earlier today. Traffic coming out from Water Street is going to be difficult no matter what we do. It's going to be really tight if we do phase construction. I can show you the truck turning movements, I have them at the end, but basically they're going to be rubbing up against this rail right here, and there could be possible conflicts. He has to have a really good driver to not hit this rail. Same thing on this side, when we pull the truck through, he's going to potentially be rubbing on this rail as well, so those are considerations for that. So we're recommending the short-term closure because basically we want to get in and we want to get out. We want to get out of this town as fast as possible. You're going to want to get us out of your hair too, and we believe that this is the best approach to the project. So again, we would allow potentially for that 2-week alternating one way, but Rob would work on that prior to the closure period. You'd have your 10-day closure, and then we try to open it to two-lane traffic as quickly as we can after the bridge is open. So here's a good question for you guys. What is the maximum acceptable length of the closure period?
I don't see a 0 up there.
Yeah.
I guess that's the prerogative of the person that's asking the question. Right?
Well, and we're gonna, feel free to ask questions or to talk to us about concerns.
And that's my concern.
So you are, which owner again? Help me out.
I have interest in 3, 7, and 8 Bellows Falls Road, Basketville, in that area.
Okay, are you the one that was the owner of Basketville?
Well, it's a family business.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just trying to get an orientation again because I met quite a few people. So I will show you the turning movements for both. I'll bring that up at the end. And again, this isn't locking anything in. This is just getting a feeling from the folks that are in the audience.
My concern is that probably 999 of 1,000 customers is coming north, and they're going to come to that bridge, and they're going to turn around and go back.
Oh, so you're concerned about business loss?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty typical standard concern that we get when we do closures. We certainly do closures in downtown all the time. So one of the things that we didn't talk about is the closure period can really occur whenever the community wants to have this closure. The nice thing in this case is we have no in-stream work windows because we're not getting into the water. Usually that restricts us to July and August. And the other thing is the school buses as well. Also restrict us. Usually a lot of school buses use the routes that we're going to close, and so we work with the school systems as well to figure out, could you take the local bypass? Are you willing to sort of accommodate? So time of year is something we can play with. I know that we've got some different property owners here that probably have different times of the year that are better for them, but that's one of the things that we'll talk about. So for example, I'll just give you an example, which doesn't work for Soundview. But for example, in Woodstock Village, downtown, Woodstock Village, and we've done 2 closures in their community, and you know how Woodstock is, we love them, but they're another kind of, business community, rely on travel and tourism. Stowe, we just closed 108 in Stowe this past summer. So we recognize we work in these towns with a lot of local business, and in those cases what we did is we closed the road during the mud season, or we will be closing the road during the mud season in Woodstock, and we closed the road in the mud season in Stowe. That doesn't necessarily line up with Soundview. So that's, we've got different business owners with different times of the year that work better. And that's going to be one of the things we're going to do is work with the community to figure out what is the best time of the year to close the road.
With all due respect, it seems these projects kind of take on a schedule of their own. I'm really skeptical about the 10 days. I think it could easily drag on to many more. I'm just thinking of bridge projects like the one over, on the interstate now, for example.
Different
It could be
situation,
delayed
yeah.
for years. And time of year does make a big difference to us. In October, it's really critical. In February, not so much, but I don't imagine you'll be working in February, and I'm just really skeptical on the 10-day thing.
So if it makes you feel any better, a couple of things I offered is, number one, we're happy to, I can't speak to the Brattleboro Design Build project, that's in a totally different program, and Rob and I don't work in that program.
Did you work on the parking lot out here?
No, I wasn't in that program either.
That was not an accelerated program for sure.
So I can only speak for the Accelerated Bridge Program, and Rob can speak for the Accelerated Bridge Program. Both he and I are founding members. We've been there both since the program started in 2012. I had a project so number one, I was gonna say we're happy to give you references. And so far, we're 100% on our bridges opening early, and our contractors getting full incentive. I had a project in Rochester on 73 where I replaced 3 bridges in one construction season. 2 of those bridges were over weekends, so I built a brand new bridge in 3 days. I did that twice. And I also put in a very, very complicated culvert under deep, deep fill with a lot of different constraints, and I did that in 14 days. Far more complicated than this one. I completely understand where you're coming from. I'm not discounting you at all. I'm just saying that we've done this all over the state and we've been very successful. And so, Rob's here tonight. I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've just said.
It's a different type of construction. This is, I guess, proven construction in other states. It's kind of been led by, started out in more urban areas where they have a lot of volume of traffic. And we've kind of got a little niche in Vermont where we can really apply this, even though we don't have, 100,000 cars a day. Even though we had 3,000 cars a day, I think it was, it's still applicable to Vermont. And like Jennifer said, we've had a pretty good success ratio. And I know it's, like you said, you've seen all those conventional projects, but they just seem to keep going and going. But accelerated bridge construction is a different way of building things. And VTrans has recognized that, and we have our own section now that's dedicated to only doing accelerated bridge construction. So it's not just like, we're trying this, to see how it happens. We're dedicating an entire in-house team, and we have a whole bunch of consultants that help us execute these types of projects.
I think it is a little bit calculated too, not to have 0 up there as an option.
Well, that's a
is
closure
there an
option. We also showed you the phased option, which is 0. That is 0 days closed. So if we go with a closure option, these are the alternatives, the different days that you could choose. The phased option is 0.
Jennifer, can you speak to the loss in revenue at all with that?
So loss of revenue would be something that might be more applicable to Soundview. So basically how loss of revenue works is if we were for some reason to have an impact where, for example, Woodstock is a good example. So in Woodstock, we have a property owner where they have one access to their building, and when Rob goes in to replace a bridge rail, he's actually going to have to stop that access, meaning somebody can't physically walk into the building, and there's 3 businesses upstairs in that building. So because we are physically preventing people from walking into that building, we're closing that access, we are going to compensate them for business loss. So if there's a direct impact where you cannot do your job, or you can't, people can't physically come onto your property because we're blocking you, we compensate you for that. In this case, we're not going to be blocking access to Basketville. We won't be blocking access to Soundview either. One of the things we can do...
In my opinion, you are blocking access, so I think we differ on that. Like I said, all of my customers come up from the south to the north. If they can't get across the bridge, we're blocking the customer.
So 2 things. One is that we can put up signs saying businesses are open. We do that. And the other thing is, I would love to put you in touch with Stowe, because Stowe was a very tricky project, and again, we're right in downtown in their business area, same exact concerns. That one wasn't even actually in the Accelerated Bridge Program. That was done by another program, but again, used Accelerated Bridge Construction. And I will tell you, they were very skeptical about that, had the same exact concerns, and they're very, very happy. We actually have a video we could show about that as well.
Did they have a local bypass that they allowed?
They signed it also.
Yeah,
I was gonna
to
ask
sign the
about
local
that.
bypass to help people getting to that point at Kimball Hill.
And they so when the grant came in, that's how the town decided to use the grant.
Was to help sign
Yes.
that and get people to that other
Yes.
side without having to turn around.
Yes, exactly. So again, it's working with the communities, but I understand your concerns, and they're extremely valid, and we do very much care about our local businesses and our communities. We really, really do. That's something that we strive for. In fact, the other thing I can do is we've got lots of customer surveys.
We've surveyed over 400 people in the state of Vermont on our closures, and we have an 87% highest satisfaction rating for our accelerated bridge construction project with short-term closures, and the next tier down is another 11%. Does that add up? No, so it must be 85 and 11, that's what it is, which gets us up to 96, at the highest ratings basically that you can get. So again, we understand and we want to work with communities, we want to work with businesses, that's our goal. And at the end, there's going to be a question about whether if you find our scope satisfactory, and you can say no. So there'll be another vote there at the end. So which time of year would be most acceptable for Bridge 15 to be closed? And again, we're not locking anything in today. We're going to be working with the community to figure out dates and times that work.
How about early May? Early May. Yeah.
So this is a slide, it just talked.
Did you talk to somebody at the school district about the buses yeah?
No, we had talked about that on Friday, but I haven't been in touch with them about whether or not they'd be willing to alternate their route. And that would be something, a decision between the town and the school and everybody involved.
The other thing regarding buses is the regional transit provider, CRT, operates a service on Route 5. I don't know what the weight limit is of their larger bus. It might be something just to keep in mind.
That should definitely not be a problem on the,
It wouldn't be a problem for the bridge, but it would exceed the road capacity.
the road
probably.
capacity.
And then maybe to turn the movement onto.
And then they would definitely have problems with turning. Sand Hill's not really conducive to large vehicles.
This is probably, I don't want to be sort of the environmentalist or whatever, but Sand Hill Road does run through the middle of a wetland. And in late May, June, the female turtles are crossing the road, not all of them, but quite a few, to get to egg-laying sites. So early May would work prior to that kind of back and forth happening with them. And the baby turtles probably would be out about in August, which from that point, I think July is just busy for tourists and so on, and that doesn't work as well. So I'm sort of tending toward early May.
So earlier in the construction season.
Early May, it's only 10 days. It's toward the end of May. But with weather like we're having, who knows, you know?
I did a 45-day closure in Middlebury. That was a much more complicated structure, and we started April 15th. So we do have the ability to get in early, but again.
And winter months are out altogether.
Winter months are out because
Yeah.
we have a certain construction season. We also have to cure, we've got to have certain temperatures for curing concrete, different things like that.
Plus, you don't want that local traffic on your local road either, to your condition of that road. Again, it depends on the weather, but the condition of the road can influence.
I'm thinking that for May also, I mean, for Sand Hill Road, if we were having heavy traffic on Sand Hill Road, late mud season, no way.
I don't see any upside to closing the bridge. I don't know why we just wouldn't do it phased.
Well, it is a downside actually for Sandview. Well, there's two reasons. Soundview, sorry. There's two reasons. Soundview is still going to have an issue with the rubbing of the rails with their larger trucks. And the other issue is we're going to be here the entire construction season. You will have traffic downtown your entire construction season. And it's unfortunate that the Putney General Store isn't here, because one of the things we didn't show you is the parking along Route 5. Their parking is actually inside the state right-of-way. So and the contractor's going to be able to use that. So the longer the contractor is here in Putney, the longer they can use up those parking spaces. So for that business, they're probably going to be on the other side where they want to try to get get the project out of there as soon as possible. So this is the thing, everybody's got opposing things that are important to them, and that's why this gets very tricky working in a downtown setting.
There are opposing things, but we could work together as a community. There's a lot of parking on the other side of that bridge. Could be made available to them.
Where are you proposing a staging if the most significant staging would be? Would it be right on Route 5?
So we don't deal with contractor staging in the agency. That's something that the contractor needs to do. That being the case, they are allowed to use the state right-of-way. So when we close the road, I mean, where we close it, they're allowed to use that area and that space. And so they will be able to use that space. Same thing with phased. I mean, they can use anything within the state right of way. They still have to maintain traffic flows, but that's an issue where, you know, you got parking on the side of the road, so they can basically park something there if they needed to and take up that parking space.
So you'll be essentially closing it from the intersection of Kimball Hill and
Well, we have to
5.
maintain access to all drives, so Sandview, did I say it correctly this time?
Soundview.
I'm having
That's
such a hard
Sandville and
time. I think that's
Soundview,
what's
like,
going on,
merged
and I really
together.
apologize, because I hate using the wrong name. But, so we have to maintain access to all drives, period, which means the folks across the way with the hair salon, the paper company. So we still have to maintain access, but they are allowed to basically use that space. So Rob, that's one of the things he'll have to look at when he develops his final plans, is where can he basically place those barricades to do the closure.
And you guys just acquired the lot beside the demo of that building. I believe that we will also be needing to work with you with the closure option. Some of the impacts would be onto that property. So you will have an impact. You'll be involved directly with our right-of-way agents and stuff like that, and
we can come back
we
to
will.
these.
You know, you won't be cut out, and we'll make sure that.
Greg, is there a time during that window that was on there that is any better for?
We'll go
that
back
as
to all
far
these
as that
questions,
busy-
but-
Is that all those months
All
are
right.
busy months?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
These are the turning movements that we modeled. So this is using a WB67, which is basically the largest truck that we can model that is out basically and available. So you can see as the paper company folks pull in, they do have to swing into this parking lot and drive down. Same thing, when they're pulling out, there'll be a slight impact as well. So because the truck is pulling onto somebody else's property, and we know that, then there'll be right-of-way compensation for that. And in terms of the folks that occupy this building, we recognize is that there's parking spaces, and so they will be compensated for that as well. The other piece to this is that right now there is a sidewalk project planned. So if we go with the closure option, what we're gonna do is they're gonna take the sidewalk part out of their project, or Putney's project. We're gonna absorb that into our project, and the state's gonna pay for that, with no match required from the town. So there's a little benefit to get a free portion of sidewalk in here. So I'll show you what phase construction looks like. Phase construction, they still have issues here. They're driving into the site, and you can see to make the turn, he's got to swing out, and there's kind of that barrier right there, and he comes down. Same thing when he pulls out, he's got the same issue where he's rubbing right up against that rail right there and out. And the same thing when we do the second phase and he's driving in, you can see again, he's kind of pushed up against that rail as he pulls in. And the same thing, especially when he pulls out, he's kind of clipping that corner. Again, we're modeling it inside of software, so it's not necessarily ideal or perfect, but this is what we use to look at turning movements.
so does
Can I
that
add one thing?
demonstrate that it actually is possible?
Well,
So this is a conservative truck.
see that right there?
And the way it's modeled right now, it is not possible for phasing. So if we choose the phasing option, we would have to refine the analysis. We would have to possibly make some improvements to that intersection if possible. And if we still can't get it to work, then they would still need to make the big loop and do the detour. So even though the bridge would be open for the paper mill, they still wouldn't be able to use it because they can't physically fit through the phasing. Hopefully they can. We think that we can get them through,
They could-
but
they
with
could go out that way, turn around.
maybe. I mean, but
Down through it.
without doing a lot more detailed analysis, we can't be certain yet. And we didn't go into that level of analysis yet until we determined the scope of work.
So the other thing is that if he can't get in and out with phasing, he's still gonna have to swing into this parking lot, and these people are still gonna be affected, whether it's phased or whether it's closed.
Then you mentioned closing Hilo Video Road.
Correct. So
Yeah.
if we go phased,
You
we're
have
gonna,
truck traffic that goes down Hilo Video Road.
because there's so many different merging streets here, and because we'd have to put in lights on both sides, right, and we have to let different traffic flows go at any one time, we're proposing to close High Biddy Road, which is this one right here? Where are we at?
That's a driveway. Next one up.
Which one?
There, yep, down.
This one?
Yeah, that's that Liberty.
Okay, because that would be one less, basically turning movement, one less traffic stream that we have to allow to go through.
That's for the mill, it's a priority path for the tractor trailer trucks, because they can't come in the other way, there's no room, for the rolls coming off of that machine, the upper machine. so they have to go up.
They have to use
Main
high
Street, They have to turn right
to go onto that road.
to handle the product coming out.
So closing that road is not an option. Okay, so now you're looking at even more phases if that's the case, and even
5 phases.
5 phases,
water-
lots of delays, you're gonna have traffic in downtown for an entire construction season. That's what you're looking at. Helps the businesses, because you got more people waiting, and sure, if they're waiting, they might as well go shopping, but you also have some people that are really irritated because they have to sit in traffic for a really long time to get through this intersection. So again, pluses and minuses depending on which perspective you look at it from. So I'm just gonna go back to where we were, and you'll have that question here. We go all the way back. Okay, so these are the costs, less relevant to the town. This is usually something towns care more about when they're town highway projects and you have a share. In this case, you have no share, but we're estimating right now as a scoping estimate to be around $800,000 to do the deck replacement with an off-site detour. This number will increase if we go phase construction again, because we're doing everything twice and the contractor's here longer, so it costs more money.
By what kind of numbers? Like percentage? I mean, are you talking?
I'll throw that out to the
5%
estimators, because I don't normally estimate.
We usually
Costs.
bump up our estimates for phase about 20%,
20%.
typically, from conventional costs. This one's already increased a little bit for the accelerated part of it, so it probably wouldn't be 20% higher than that. So maybe split the difference, just for estimating purposes, ballparking about 10% higher.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and this is a place where you're gonna see some questions here where you can basically document your feelings about the closure. So which would you be most concerned about? Closure duration, bridge aesthetics, environmental impact, recreational impacts, emergency services, business impacts, other, or you're not really concerned? And again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. The next question is, those will toggle back down. Which design aspect is more important to you? Shoulder width, bicycle accommodations, the aesthetics of the bridge railing, the construction year, construction duration, cost, or other?
Is there, I can't, I'm trying to picture it right now, but is there a way of just lowering a temporary pedestrian bridge somewhere on either side of that? I can't, no.
No,
To the
but,
west, it would be.
but we can, but like I said, if pedestrians, you know, if we have a lot of pedestrian access, then we'll figure out a way to get a bus to bus people around.
Mhm.
That is federally eligible.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, and did you find this presentation to be too technical, too simplified, just about right, not much use at all? It's okay, you won't hurt our feelings.
You ask us after the bridge is done.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna start doing customer surveys on every single bridge project, starting this summer. We piloted in the last 2 summers, but we're gonna do it on every single project, including, I assume, Brattleboro Design Build. So you'll get an opportunity. When that opportunity comes, can't tell you that, but there will be an opportunity. Okay, there's 2 more questions. How did you hear about the meeting? We're trying to learn a little bit more about how to, getting out the announcements really, really hard. That's one of the most challenging parts of my job, is to try to let people know about it.
I don't think my little thingy works.
You don't think it's working?
Oh,
Maybe that's.
you over Christmas.
It starts shocking them.
Here, guys, the last question's really important, so if that one's not working,
That's fine.
Now we're gonna know what you picked.
I'll make sure that that we got you for the last one.
Yeah, it made a difference.
Okay, and here's your opportunity. So, did you find the recommended scope of work satisfactory? Again, we're recommending closure, 10-day closure. We're gonna try to minimize that if we can, work it down.
So this is a referendum on closing here?
This is the whole scope,
Yes.
which is two
So
parts.
if you're against closing, you would say no.
Yeah, if you were against closing, you would say no. It's deck and maintenance of traffic. Has everybody had a chance to click? I just want to make sure everyone's that wants to click has clicked. Okay. Everyone's clicked in? Yeah? Okay. And that is the end of our presentation. So if there are other questions or concerns that we didn't address, I'd be more than happy to address them.
I don't think it was mentioned when you're planning on doing this.
Oh, that is a good question. We took out the schedule slide. I forgot to see that that was in there. That's an excellent question. So what we would like to do in the way the program is project right now is that we would do this during the 2017 construction year. That being said, we are going to have to deal with right-of-way here, which could potentially push it out to 18. So one of the things Rob's going to do right away, once we're done with the scoping phase, is he's going to meet with right-of-way. This is a little bit different because we're not having right-of-way impacts in terms of, most of our right-of-way impacts, right, we have like a slope easement on your property or something that's very defined, and in this case it's more about turning movements for trucks. And so it should require the same time to get through right-of-way, which means that there's a chance Rob could get it out for 2017 construction, but it just depends on working with our right-of-way folks. But that's the first thing he'll do once he gets it into design, and we will definitely let you know as soon as we know and have a defined schedule. We're aiming for 17, but because of right-of-way, we might be at 18. I don't know, Rob, I didn't really give you a chance to talk. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, right away is, we go out to property owners, there's the whole process that they have, but there's also the discussions with property owners, it goes into negotiations, and so there's a whole back and forth with property owners and the right-of-way section, but there's also the right-of-way section needs to prepare plans, so it adds a whole other element of the process.
And I truly am happy, Cynthia, maybe I can email it to you, I'm more than happy to send you a list of other towns you guys can check in with and get references, especially downtown ones.
And then I'll have it, and then if somebody wants it, they can
Sure.
just ask me.
Sure.
And as far as determining when within the 2017 season, I mean, I would have to guess.
That's all.
Greg, and that's what I'm wondering. I mean,
It's
Greg
all up to
probably
you
has more
guys.
stake than anybody, I would think.
It's all up to the community, especially here where, like I said, we don't have in-stream work windows. Has to be during a construction season, but within that construction season, we're really easy to work with in terms of when you want to do the closure. And Rob, like I said, he's going to look to reduce the number of days down from 10, but we start conservative so that we don't come back and ask for more. We come back and we tell you we can do it in less.
I'll
That's
tell
our
you
goal.
that there is another thing that we're trying to consider during this process is that is if it's 2017, that's the year we do a dam cleanup. So that would help minimize the traffic flow from Soundview because they're closed down for a couple of days during our dam cleanup, and that happens in the summer. So when we talked about it the other day, Tom and Brian both thought probably the beginning of the summer would be the better time. They picked that because of bus schedules too, school bus. So, but any feedback I can get, like Greg, if it's going to be a closure, what out of all those months would be, maybe there isn't one of them that would be.
And
but,
I mean, is the closure aspect a done deal or not? I mean,
It's our recommended alternative. When we go to communities, we don't force closures. So if the select board wrote us a letter and said, we're adamantly opposed to the closure, and we don't want it in our town, then we would go phase construction. If the select board feels and agrees that it's the right thing for the community to get in and get out and not be here all summer long, then we'll proceed forward with the closure.
Is July the summer month that they would agree with for the taking care of the dam maintenance?
I think so. We haven't, this is just something I've been talking about. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on, you have to get a permit from.
Is that the number of eggs that just sitting in the ground?
What was the time again?
July.
July, all of July?
I'm not a turtle, I don't know.
Well, just the window would be
Yes,
from
I would
July.
think, because if they're laying late May and June, then the eggs are, incubating for July in the heat. And then they start to emerge probably in August.
Partially July and August was picked too after a discussion with Landmark because that's the time of year, there's a couple weeks. Is it a
July
couple?
is actually our busiest month in the summer.
Oh, gee.
Well, didn't somebody say that there was a time in July there weren't students there?
No, he's got 2
The end
weeks.
of August.
It's,
okay.
was it
It's late
beginning?
August.
It was like June, wasn't there was a couple weeks in June, I think, didn't you say?
The second half of May, and then
It was
the
in
end of
May,
August.
second half of May, okay. 'Cause I have those dates
Okay.
in my email box.
For some reason I had July in my head.
And does your truck volume change, I mean, like deliveries, et cetera? Is there a
Just with
more
the dining
business
hall,
intensive time?
At the dining hall, when there are more students on campus, they get more
More
deliveries of food
deliveries,
and that kind of stuff. Other than that, it
Doesn't vary much.
doesn't really vary, yeah.
So we appreciate your time. Cynthia's got my email, so I'm more than happy, and my phone number, more than happy to talk with folks.
So I guess what is the next step?
So the next step is,
For us, what do you
Yeah, I
recommend
mean,
for us?
you guys, I mean, it's not a town highway project, so I don't need a formal letter of endorsement from the select board.
Right, but
Again,
if you hear nothing,
then we're gonna move forward with the closure.
Okay.
And we would move forward with looking to see if we can reduce time down from 10 days. We would also work with the community on determining the best time of the year to do the closure. And then, we would continue to proceed forward. If the select board writes us a letter saying we're adamantly opposed and we want phased construction, then we will do that. It would be nicer for you to let us know earlier rather than later, because basically we're gonna kick off design as soon as we can.
okay.
And was everybody able to sign in? Would we have your contact information on the sign-in sheet that went through? So that way we can reach out to you. So,
There's a sign-in sheet right here.
I don't know if everybody's seen it or not, but that'd be really helpful for us if you guys could all sign it.
For the local detour, are you guys gonna be looking at turning movement data to accommodate any large trucks?
So
onto Sand Hill?
there's 2 things. One is, again, we don't do anything with the local
Okay.
bypass. Now, there are cases where we work with certain communities where I have done some blue lights further out, where it's kind of like the last place a truck can turn around for the first couple of days. Because sometimes, we do the best we can about getting the word out to the trekking community that the road, that there's a detour and that the bridge is closed. But there's not a real formal trekking community in Vermont. There's sort of an informal, loose one. So what we do is sometimes the first couple of days, we'll put UTOs out, kind of the last good place to turn around for your large truck away from the bridge. We turn folks around until they sort of know that, yes, the closure's happening. And because what we don't want is a truck driving all the way to the bridge and now they got to back out to get to a point where they can turn around and leave. So that is something that we can do.
You mentioned about a public outreach.
Oh, yes, that's a good point. So the other thing we do is we do have public outreach coordinators that we hire, especially when we're in a downtown setting like this. Project outreach coordinator would be likely hired in final design, then they work side by side with us all the way through construction. What they do is they come up to speed, they work with the community, they hear concerns, they also inform the community. So what will happen eventually is they'll develop a listserv, an email listserv, and then what they'll do is prior to the closure, within a couple of weeks, they will kind of send out an email blast letting people know the closure is going to happen. And then a couple of weeks, once a week, 2 weeks leading up to the closure, once a week during the closure period, and then while the contractor's still around in the village, they will send out a weekly email blast letting people know what's going on with the project. So just keeping people informed about when the road's open, when it's closed, those kind of things. They're also around to address any concerns folks may have, that kind of thing. They're great. We have some wonderful project outreach coordinators. They get to know our communities really, really well. Well, I appreciate, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us come to Brent. We took up quite a bit of your time, so I do appreciate it. And Cynthia's been wonderful to work with.
Yeah, in your clicker.
Yeah, if we can just.
To order at, what time is it?
Wait.
7:08. Any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Good. All right. And then I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second for minutes. Any comments? We're set?
Aye.
Yeah, okay. We'll speed through this. All right, and new business, town meeting prep.
Okay, so in your packet, there is the warning, which I just did some notes highlighted in red, just so I could make sure that, I know we went over the warning, we talked about a few things, but I just wanted to give this to you guys. I'll bring it to town meeting too, so that you can have it in front of you. But the one that I really wanted to talk about was Article 5. That article, we did not put "and annual warning." So it'll have to be moved, seconded, and then an amendment done to include "and warning." And then we can talk about it. But I have a call, Meg Mott's coming on Monday, so her and I can talk about this process and why we're gonna have to amend it. Okay? Article 6, the library trustees, they only have 2 names right now, there's 3 seats. So someone could add from the floor, which hasn't really happened. Usually they have.
With library.
Yeah, they usually just have their slate of candidates and it just, so someone on the floor might, so that might be a little different than what we've had in the past. The sewer fund, I'm going to have a handout on the desk. When you look in the town report, some of the percentages of increase or decrease on that report are not right. So I'm gonna fix those and have a handout. Brian said he will be there to speak for Article 9, which is the borrowing for the truck, for the dump truck. And that's pretty much it. I did put a note under Article 14 to remember that that will be where we allow the tax exempt committee to give their report. I mean, I suppose it could be done up under the, to hear and act upon the reports of the town officers. That's looking at the town report. I don't know, what do you guys think? I think it could be a lengthy discussion, so we might want to have it down under other.
That's what I would think.
Yeah. And I think that that's when Nancy was prepared to talk about it. So is there any other questions about the articles and process and anything you've thought about since last time we talked about town meeting? I don't suspect that.
I just wish I could be there to support you all through the process.
Where will you be?
Laid up?
You'll be right there
Napping.
on that stage. I also put a handout. I am going to be adding to the handout just some notes about town hall repairs, what we're saying that we're going to be repairing. Like I said, the handout with the change of the percentages on the sewer fund. So I'll put it on this handout that we're going, and this is where I talked about and I think I emailed it to everybody, but the difference between the general fund and highway fund and why we separated it and what that means. And I don't know if anybody got a chance to read it to see if there was anything they wanted me to add to that.
I have not had a chance to.
Okay, well, if you find something between now and Tuesday, just let me know.
Yeah. What you emailed us is just the same as this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty much it for town meeting prep. I don't have, as I was quoted in the Commons as saying, it's gonna be pretty boring.
Yeah, I saw that.
What, town meeting's
I
gonna be
need
pretty
to use
boring?
better choice of words when I'm
Right,
talking to the paper.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Sorry.
Yeah, putting us all down.
I didn't mean that it was.
well
I meant to say that there was not
Expedient.
something. It really wasn't meant to come out as boring, but what she asked, is there anything exciting happening this year? And I said, no, it's pretty boring.
Lack of crises in governance is not a bad negative thing.
Nothing else for town meeting?
So, road name?
Yep. There is a memo in here from Tom about the approval of a road name, and there's an attached map on here of where it is. It's off of Pine Banks Road, South Pine Banks. And basically, in this section on Pine Banks Road, this is the property, the one that's highlighted in pink, that I colored in pink. They're gonna be building a house on that property. They need a 911 address. And when Tom did the assignment, the two properties on either side already have the assigned numbers. There's not, I don't know how the thing works.
Not room for one in
Yeah,
between.
so basically,
Oh, I see.
it's a private road that you're naming, which is unusual, I guess. He explains all that in here. But it will make it so that the other people don't have to renumber. So there would be four houses he said that would have to renumber if he gave them a number in between. And I don't know if you've been out there. I think what happens when you come off of Pine Banks Road, it's kind of like a shared driveway here. And then off of that is a driveway coming to this property. So basically, we're naming that driveway to their property. Do you know where we are? Here's Baines.
Right,
And then here's the house, it's got kind of like a tower.
yeah.
Yeah, and then here, there's this little weird, like, it seems like it goes in two different directions. I can't picture it in my head right now. But,
What seems like it goes in two different directions?
well, it's like a little Y right here, the entrance into, like the driveway might go here.
So they're gonna bring a driveway down here,
The driveway's on here,
I see.
yeah. What I was concerned about when Tom called me about it was that it would look like if they put a sign up that said Morse Road, which is what they're proposing to, Morse Lane, was that it was gonna be a sign directly off of Pine Banks, and how was it not gonna look like the other two were also
Oh,
on
they
that?
split the driveway?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And he said they'll place the
I've been
sign
in
in
there, actually, yeah. Huh.
He said they'll place the sign in a place where it doesn't do that.
Okay.
He did make sure that they were aware that we would not be maintaining this just because we were naming it, but it's not a town road.
Right.
Is it one that says private then afterwards? Is that
Yeah,
how
I
that
think,
works?
yeah.
I don't love the idea, but I don't see a great
Yeah, he didn't
alternative.
really love the idea either.
I mean,
But
I
it
could
was
be
that,
Harry
I-
Potter-like and call it 210 and a half.
Apparently the 911 does not allow, I don't understand the system. Is there a certain number of,
All, right, even numbers are on the right side, odd are on the left. So you got no room between 210 and 212.
yeah.
So you'd have to push the other houses back, so.
he was trying to avoid making other people change their addresses. And I think how this happened was a subdivision happened in the middle of all of this.
Right.
I said to him, are there any other ones like that right now? And he said he couldn't, it's hard to tell because you never know when somebody's going to subdivide in between. I thought for some reason they left a certain amount of numbering.
You would think they would, if there was, especially if there was access, but if it was subdivided afterwards, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Well, I mean, if that's the most, if it's Tom's recommendation, I guess it's
Yeah.
what we go with, I don't.
I guess, is there a big downside to naming another road?
No, it's just
Okay.
another
Okay.
road sign out there that
Right.
we pay to put in, and, right, do we pay for the sign? We do, don't we? Yeah,
Oh, I see.
and then if it gets taken out, we pay to replace
I
it,
see.
and, it's also, I don't know, I just think it's cleaner if you don't do it that way.
I know.
You know? There's not a subdivision out there, I mean, I'd be tempted to have him push people's numbers around, but maybe that's not worth it. I don't wanna be a pain in the neck, if this is what he's,
How does that, I guess, I mean.
He said the first, there are two options available to rectify the situation. The first would involve assigning new 911 addresses to 4 different buildings beyond 210, which would require the property owners to change all of their respective addresses information.
This would be disruptive and unfortunate. And then the second would be what he's suggesting. It would create a separate road off of South Pine Banks
Yeah.
Road. He's spoken to the 911 board. They are in agreement that the assignment would be most appropriate.
Okay, that's
And-
fine. I'll make a motion that we accept Tom's recommendation to assign the name of Morse Lane to location 210.5.
210B, right?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So the town meeting summary I did under town manager report, actually we did with the town meeting prep. And I didn't do a budget status report. We did the warrants.
Trying to hide something from
No,
us.
totally
For God's
forgot.
sakes, what did you do?
If you'd like to pick one up in the morning, stop by. I get a little disoriented when I have to pack up to come down here.
Other business?
I guess the only thing I want to talk about is how I proceed with this bridge project we just talked about.
I don't know. It's a tricky one. I'd say we put it in the manager's hand and leave it at that.
And step out blameless from the, it's, you know, it's a difficult choice. I mean,
It
it's
is
plainly
difficult.
gonna be onerous to not only the business, you know, large users of that passageway, you know, the mill, Landmark, and Basketville, but also just the increased, you know, public concern over increased traffic on Sand Hill, which will extend to both sides of it, you know, of the time frame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People will
I-
start using, you know,
Indefinitely.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and either
However,
option, either
happens every
option.
time it
The
gets
flip
used for a
side,
period of
of
time.
course, the argument becomes downtown Putney, the longer it's snarled with the phased construction process, it affects all the businesses and whatnot, so.
And you can rest assured that if you did the phase thing, you're still gonna have a huge volume of traffic on Sand Hill for a longer period of
Exactly,
time. Not
exactly.
quite as intensively,
Exactly.
but
But everyone, you know,
everybody
everyone
local
local
is
is
gonna go
going to
that
use
way.
that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I think that, you know, signage for Greg and for Landmark, I mean, I don't know what we have to do in order to make it legit that we put up signage, but I think signage is,
Yeah. I think the
Fine,
concern
yeah.
for putting up this, I mean, like the state has told us, the local bypass is completely under our control.
Right,
We
right.
can sign it if we want to, we don't have to. I
Right.
think that we would sign it
right.
to get the traffic that can go that way over to the other side. It's a
Right.
mile and, 1.8 miles or something. Even as far as what, you know, mileage, how long it's gonna take you in this bypass to get to Joann's, the salon, Basketville, and Landmark, so that people understand when they're coming off the interstate, they're not driving another 15 miles, they're really driving a mile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could say that.
And
I mean,
then-
Greg, we could almost I mean, that's probably, you know, for Joanne and them, I mean, that's mostly a local,
Yeah,
that's mostly a local following, so people are gonna know. For Basketville people, I think having the mileage on there would
Right.
probably be important.
and then work with the state to maybe get, for the first few days, some police coverage to make sure that that bypass is not sending
Trucks.
trucks and,
Tractor
yeah,
trailers, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, although I understand all the concerns, I think we have to work with the people right in the vicinity, which I think we really are trying really hard, but you have to think about the rest of the people in town too. This is gonna affect a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and it, you know,
So-
also like that question of, I mean, I think mud season is a great idea, but we can't open mud, you know, we can't push traffic on Sand Hill in mud season. You know, that's,
Right, and I'm sure for their accelerated program, they have a time frame that they would, you know, be more effective to make that
well, I think the May through September, that's what they were saying.
window.
One thing we did not talk about and nobody asked about was fire and emergency services if the bridge was closed. And Tom was here the other day during the presentation and he clearly, yes, he's uncomfortable with a bridge closure, but it's doable,
Yeah.
especially for the shorter amount of time. You know, we can make a mutual aid agreement with Westminster, or
Right.
whoever, you know,
Yeah.
so. Brian said during that time period, we may just work on east
One side, yeah.
side of town
For
and
the
not,
most part,
for the most
yeah.
part, if they, you know, unless something happens, so.
Yeah.
I think most everybody I have talked to, they're in agreement that, the faster they get in and out, the better. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I totally understand Greg's skepticism about
Oh, I
the
do too.
time frame.
But
However, I think they do a good job at this particular thing. I mean, I don't think it tends to drag on like a.
Yeah, I don't, I mean,
Bridge project, but.
I wanted to ask if they had an accelerated
I mean, I'd
sidewalk.
look at that, the example of the bridge that went in north of Putney on Route 5, that worked out really well. You know,
That was pretty fast. I mean, that was a big project, but it was pretty fast, yeah.
I mean, it was totally different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, this makes sense with precast.
And
You know,
it's a choke point, there's a limitation here that we can't get around.
Yeah.
You know, there's no place to put
There's no right
temporary
answer.
bridging.
Right.
There's no really effective, quick detour around it to allow for all traffic. I mean, for local traffic there is, but it's, as I say, it's still gonna tie up, downtown for all of downtown. You know, where the traffic starts backing up down, all the way down.
I mean, I guess the thing to do
Shorter,
is to
better.
survey the largest parties interested, i.e. Landmark, Basketville, the school system, probably,
Of time frame.
of time frame,
Yeah.
and just
Right.
see whether by some bizarre
Right.
coincidence
Right.
you will end up with,
Yeah.
you know, say, this is our window, if there, and say, what 2-week window for closure would be the most tolerable to you? And if you happen to get any overlap, then maybe that's what we go with,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we
Is there
pretty
a-
much
is
kind
there
of,
a
we
way
just need to get it
to-
on one sheet and pull it together. I
Some
think
kind
they've
of
pretty much surveyed
pedestrian
everybody.
access across there.
That's what I'm wondering too.
The pedestrian access issue would probably ameliorate some of Greg's concerns. I mean, if, you could have a bus pull, I realize that.
Yeah.
But it's still, because parking to the south of that is still going to be limited in access and whatnot.
I mean, I think for Greg, good signage is gonna be
Right.
the
The key.
best thing. I mean, it's not gonna be perfect,
Park,
but it's gonna be better
our new
than.
park and ride and get the trolley bus that will take you on a nice
Ride to
round
Basketville.
tour up Sand Hill Road to Basketville. You know, It's not going to help Landmark
Only get stuck in the mud
Right,
for
but if,
15 minutes.
if we can get the
just
times
at
to,
that tight corner. with
True
the
from my
bank.
experience.
if we can get the times to overlap where Landmark is not in session.
Yeah, exactly.
That takes a huge chunk
That would
Yeah.
be,
out of, and if we could get the timing for the few days that we're doing the dam cleanup, where Soundview has very limited trucks.
right.
That kind of takes care of those two things. And then the signage to get people over to Basketville. Then those people going to Basketville are not gonna be dealing with this huge congestion
yeah.
in town either,
Yeah.
so,
No,
Yeah.
honestly, I think in many ways, a one-way stoplight choking the center of town is as likely to turn
People
people
away.
away from Greg's as otherwise,
because
know?
it,
Be
you know
backed
how
up all
bad,
the way to the
I was
fire
gonna say, I
station.
know how bad it is some nights when I'm just trying to get out of the driveway at the
Yeah.
town
I was
hall.
gonna say, right.
Can you imagine when, if
Right.
there's lights out
Oh,
there? I'd
Is
have,
that
I'd have to
3,000
take the
cars?
bypass.
No.
Yeah,
4 lights or 3 lights.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I clearly would go down, I would go up the
Well, maybe
interstate.
we want to just
go
leave
home.
that light
I'd
down
go
there at the
home.
bottom of
Yeah.
Campbell Hill, right?
Right, and I mean, that's the thing for, like, really, it's Greg and Landmark. I mean, Soundview, I totally understand this is a huge burden for them. But logistically, it's just a matter of driving around, which is a
Right.
huge drive around, but.
But also for a short time,
but they
they
can
would probably reroute.
Right, they
Right.
can just do it, whereas, if you're looking at Greg,
catching the passing traffic.
You know, that's just lost business. There's nothing he can do to offset
Well, I have a
that.
concern with the lost business of the hair salon and
Sure.
the pizza place with
Absolutely,
the.
no, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, with the trucks turning in and out of there, the way they will have to.
Yeah,
And
nobody's gonna go there anyway.
and there's 38 trucks a day, they said today.
38,
Soundview?
each way, or,
38 trucks,
so you're looking at, yeah,
yeah.
so you're looking at adding, I mean, if you figure a half-hour round trip, you
And
know.
they, you know, and frankly, they were suggesting shutting High-Low Biddy Road down there too, which really shuts off.
I don't think they could do that.
can't.
No, I mean, I didn't ask,
Anyway.
I don't think they could go on to Christian Square the other way and then come in, yeah. So,
Okay, so I'm getting the feeling that I'm not writing a letter that we are saying absolutely no closure. Or do you guys want to think about it and come back next time and really,
I mean, it's,
the only one.
do you have a sense from, I guess I'd like to know how Soundview feels about it.
We talked with them today,
Yeah,
earlier today, and they would rather have the closure.
they would, just be done with it.
Just
than
get
to
it
be-
in, get it
yeah,
done, and try to coordinate it with the dam cleanup. So that way, there's a few
It's
days
a
that
little-
they would
little
close
more
anyways.
limited.
Right, I think finding the correct window of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, I mean, they suggested that there is some sort of loss of business compensation. or
But not in
whatnot.
I don't
Right,
think in
I know
Greg's
they're not
case there would
making it.
be.
Right.
The other
but I'm wondering
two,
if
there
there's-
might be.
If
Yeah, I
there's
think-
room to wiggle within that,
Yeah.
or if there's flexibility within that, those parameters. You know, that.
And Landmark? They probably,
No.
Again,
I
They
think
don't know what
Landmark,
you know, as far as deliveries and things like that, as long as we're not.
I don't think it matters that much for deliveries.
Because they
If
can
we're
come down Route
Students
5.
using the school and whatnot, I mean.
Well, their
that's-
food
that's-
service would be
That's,
affected.
yeah, either pedestrian or.
But where does it come from?
small
It's coming
vehicle
from
traffic.
Putney School, Putney Central, like Cisco and stuff, and then going up to Landmark. They'd have to also, depends on which way they went.
They just have to
They have
plan it
to
into
exit
their
five.
route, though.
Or exit 5.
No, but I
Yeah.
mean, you know, the fact is, if we could do it when Landmark is closed, you know, you're reducing just the volume of cars and, you know, faculty, staff, et cetera,
Right.
that's gonna just change the volume over Sand Hill.
I'll make a
pretty
list of all the
dramatically,
key,
you know.
It's gonna be changed dramatically
No matter what.
no
No, I
matter what,
agree, but-
right.
but you
So
could be
again,
talking a
which-
couple
which
hundred cars a
argues
day,
for
you know.
the shortest possible closure time,
Yeah.
as long as we time it with the turtles.
well, and the other thing is that, I mean, if we're gonna talk about effect on business, the general store, if you have that cluster of stuff going on, their businesses,
Especially,
especially their deliveries, their everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I would sit in that traffic for 10 minutes and go, forget it, I'm just gonna go to a different, I'm not even gonna drive.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, so, and I did talk to him, and he sent in a letter to me to give to the state. His, Jim's preference was closing it,
Yeah,
so,
all right.
yeah.
Well, that may be part of it too. Is there a way of figuring out other parking possibilities right in the downtown area? I mean, expanding that somehow or changing if there's any ordinances or anything that need to, I don't know if there is any.
Like what?
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking around the town hall and the tavern. I mean, the tavern parking
Yeah.
area. I mean,
People are just gonna use it
Yeah.
anyway. I mean,
well, that's in,
I don't think there's anywhere for us to
there's nowhere to expand.
take
Yeah.
by eminent domain. Take back the,
The front part of the tavern lawn. Then they'd have to drive up over the sidewalk. Oh, no, they could come from the other. I don't think we want to.
But I guess the other thing I'm still kind of curious about, isn't, and you were mentioning this too, isn't there a place between the general store and that next house over where you could essentially
The
walk
gap
back
in
to
the
the river?
buildings, no, it's up a little further.
Is it
but
up a little
there's-
further?
There's a gap there
Yeah.
between, Right, that's the perfect spot for the.
Yeah, but then
the
you're
walking
on
bridge
public,
across the
you're
street.
on private
Oh,
land on both sides and.
Right, okay.
Well into the realm of fantasy.
Yes.
That's, well, which, you know, the other is the old abutments, trying to put the footbridge across from Hilo Biddy to Twins Mill.
Right. I don't think anybody would do it at night, though.
Well, I will put together a list of the key,
The most affected.
and that will help me build a schedule of what the best time for each one of those would be, so we can see if we have an overlap.
Yeah.
I will also talk with Greg in the next couple days. This was the first time he really even absorbed any of it. I called him
Yeah.
this morning and said, did you know about this meeting? So, and tell him that I think the consensus is that the closure is the best option
Right.
for the town, maybe not the best option for him, but is there a time in that window that he would prefer?
Yes.
And what else could we do to help him?
Right,
You know,
signage, et
is-
cetera.
So get the main players
Yeah.
to sort of at least a workable timeframe. that would
And he
work
may
with it.
not,
And if that pushes
there
it
may
out-
just be a point, I mean, he may not,
If that pushes it out to 2018, then I think, you know, we would sort of have to kind of, you know, work towards that as opposed to, I mean.
if what pushes it out to 2018?
To get the right time frame that works for everyone and for the design folks as well. I mean.
I think the only thing they're
we
thinking
could
is
come to
gonna
some
hold
kind
it
of
up is the
agreement saying,
right-of-way
okay,
discussion for
between
the turning around of the truck.
May 17th and June 20th is the ideal date,
Which
but not
happens to
be
be.
ideal for the state of Vermont,
Yeah.
you know, and their design team. So give another year, of course, gives it time for everyone to get ready for it, if you would.
It's,
I
mean,
know,
it's going
right.
to, something's going to happen there. It's either gonna happen now or it's gonna happen 10 years from now.
Yeah, no, I guess
Or-
the only, I mean, what I can envision being a problem with what you're saying is, like,
Oh,
if
of
we
course, the
decided
longer
the first
it sits.
week in May was the best time to do it, and we're not gonna be able to have it out to bid in time to have it done the first week of May in 2017, does it make sense to wait for the first week of May in 2018? You know,
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if the
whether
state
it
works
jump
that
a lot
way.
of
I don't, yeah.
Exactly. I don't know what
Agendas
you
into a
back it
timeframe
out,
there.
but-
I don't know if it's like my first choice is this and my second choice is this, I don't know, or if
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, you know,
Can we have them make
Greg and Landmark.
more, where are they now? More of these available for town meeting?
We
Can
can.
we have a whole bunch of them? So we
I
can
can
just,
make
people
copies.
can-
Okay. It's amazing to me, the pieces and parts they have to put together for
Yeah.
a project like this.
It's
It
nice.
amazes me.
Yeah.
basically-
Well,
And it
and frankly,
actually-
this is a simplified project.
Yeah.
You know, imagine if they did have to get into the brook.
Yeah, and I have to say, as
that's-
frustrating as it is for some people, it amazes me how accommodating they're trying to be.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Whether
that
they are or
could-
not. No, and that's why I was sort of asking,
Yeah.
you know, is this a done deal? Because,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I asked the same thing to her the other day. It's like, are we gonna go through all of this and you're just gonna
say this is what it's gonna be.
Yeah, and she said, no, we really try to work with best time and what the
Yeah.
concerns are, and, you know, they're not gonna go in there and do a bridge project if we have a 4th of July parade on the 4th of July, you
Right.
know, they wanna make sure that they know what's going on in the community. So that's a feeling I get, maybe, I'm trying not to be skeptical about it, but,
Yeah, no, I
guess we'll
think
see.
they'll do
yeah.
the best they can.
Okay, so I will let you know at the next meeting, what I found out and, report back. That's it for me. Well, I do really wanna go into executive session to discuss a contract, but I don't know if you guys are up for that tonight.
Sure.
Yep. All right, so we're moving into executive session, 7:40. Is there any
No,
decision?
not that I know of, but
Second that?
you guys may decide something
Okay.
I don't know about.
Aye.
Aye.
Laura, I know you wanna stay.